Hi everyone, it's Luke here from Eurisko Studios. Just going to give you a brief introduction to the vRoom plugin. First of all, you've got to think about why vRoom? Why was this plugin made? What is its purpose? And what problems is it supposed to solve? I came across a problem when trying to create convincing looking buildings, and it took a while for me to find out really what the problem actually was. And it pretty much boils down to the fact that with buildings, particularly if you think about skyscrapers or high-rise buildings or ones where you can see a great many windows to the rooms, through to the rooms inside, was the fact that there is a large amount of variety, a large amount of small-scale variety, which is, if you were going to do that manually, that kind of work, to reproduce the effect that you see in real life, it would be exceptionally tedious, monotonous, and take an enormous amount of time. And I could see when I was shopping around for reference images that in most people's ArchiViz work, that actually, especially on the scale of large buildings with large quantities of windows, they tend to not actually bother with this. They'll have a few hero windows maybe, or a main lobby or something like that, but you'll often find that the windows can be silvered over, the interiors are not there, so you end up with this not terribly convincing looking building, for the obvious reason that the artist just simply hasn't got the time to invest in putting all these tiny details into every single room or every single window that you can see, which is fair enough, because up until now there's not actually been a way to do it in a time efficient manner. I've just got a list here of a few things that you'd have to do. It's kind of obvious, but I'll just list them. If you were going to create these rooms individually, you'd have to create the geometry for the room, you'd have to map a texture for the room. If there's anything showing in the window, such as blinds or curtains or maybe plants or things like that you have in quite a lot of office buildings, you'd have to furnish it with those. You'd have to create your glass distortion effects, which are based on a per window basis or a per polygon basis, it would be. And you would have to do that for every single window. And like I said, when you're talking about things like sky-rise buildings, where this effect is, really prevalent, that will just take way too much time. So that's why the vRoom was actually created, was to solve this problem. Now, if we talk about how it's done, what vRoom actually does is, if you can see in this diagram here, this light grey, I'm not sure how well that will come out in the video, but the light grey here is a polygon, a regular light wave polygon. Now what vRoom does is it fakes the geometry that can be seen, and it does this at render time by analysing the geometry of the building, the polygons with the shader applied, and it does this kind of extrude where you set your room depth, it looks at the polygon, and then it will extrude backwards to create this pseudo room based on a orthogonal set of axes. This sounds relatively simple, but in some of the later videos you'll see just how relatively complicated it can get, the variables that must be accounted for. I have to make a special note as well, just in case this ever comes up in people's minds, is that when I say this geometry is created for the rooms, this extruded geometry, this is not in any way light wave geometry. This geometry does not exist as far as light wave is concerned. This geometry only exists inside of the plugin instance. Once this geometry has been created, then obviously we have to apply the images, the lookup library of images, as I call it here. Now here's just a few test examples. This one here is a test interior that I shot. It's pretty terrible quality because it was a proof of concept for the ProBum wrapper plugin that was created from a single 1-inch. I don't think it was a ball bearing actually. I think it was a door handle or something. But it was a sphere and it was shiny. As you can see on this right hand here, it's fairly scratched, but still works. But what this image shows is this was on the left side of the room. This wall here, you can see a door and a window. Here is me, my friend, sitting there, taking the picture of the tiny sphere, the tiny door handle on the other side of the room, and this is the right side of the room with the fireplace, and this is the ceiling with the light. Now, there's actually should be 2 more off it, but I expanded this just so you could see the detail. Otherwise, the height wouldn't be great enough, and you can't see much detail as it is. If you go and watch the ProBum wrapper plugin, this will make a whole lot more sense. But anyway, they're assigned and looked up at render time to the individual rooms based on the parameters that you set. This image is then applied, and this texture is referenced, and when you're looking through a vRoom window, it will calculate exactly where that spot, what point on the wall that spot will show, and it will look up the correct pixel for an image from this image here. And you'll have a whole library of these, and these will be randomly assigned to rooms, or like I said, based on the parameters that you set. And there's another parameter called what I call window garnish, and the reason I call it garnish and not just things like curtains is because it can be a whole variety of things. It can be blinds, it can be drapes, which are curtains and things like that. It can be potted plants, like I said, furniture in the windows, basically anything that's immediately inside of a window you would assign to this garnish, this window garnish polygon. And when I say polygon, I mean a vRoom polygon. And I'll just show you if I go back to the previous one. The garnish polygon, in this case, will lie, vRoom will create a polygon just inside of this one. So just inset from the window itself. When I say window, I mean the lightwave polygon that the vRoom plugin is applied to. Now, it will then take one of the images from your library of images for window garnish, and the example I've got here is just a blind which is up by 3/4. So you see it's transparent down here and opaque here. So this will be mapped to a polygon that's just inset from the window. You'll be able to see through this lower portion down here into the room and see all of the detail of whatever's inside the room. So you'll have a different bunch of libraries, maybe one for residential interiors, maybe one for offices, and so on and so forth. And with the combination of vRoom and the ProBum wrapper, you can create your own library images for your own special projects. Now, I've been talking about buildings, and that's how the idea was conceived, was as a solution to the problem of the huge array of windows that you get when dealing with buildings. However, as I've written here, I'll just read this out, it can be used for any structure with an interior that can be seen through apertures in that outer structure. What that actually means is, if you have a lightwave object that has apertures in it, in the case of buildings that'll be the windows, but if you have a structure that you want to see through that aperture, the vRoom plugin can be applied to that. I've just got a few examples here. The obvious one is buildings. Second to that, you've got large ships. Again, they've got large amounts of windows with detail inside that may be tedious or time consuming to deal with. It will be able to handle those. You have things like trains, and also another one I thought of is multi-storey car parks, because that has an outer structure, and through the sides of that structure you can see the interior of it. And all you'd need do is, instead of this interior image being that of a room, all that needs to be is the image of the interior of the car park, for example, in this case, with all your baked illumination on there, and the vRoom plugin will deal with that. And if you have a whole variety of these images, it will give you that subtle variation over large numbers of instances. And I think that about wraps it up. So I'll see you in the future videos as we explore the vRoom plugin further. Thanks for your time.